I have to thank you for this interview. I know it's not a very common thing for you to do this, so I appreciate and I thank for your time to talk with us. I would like to start with a question that I think lots of people ask. We've been seeing a big difference or a big change, we can say like that, in the last few years of FNB in Mozambique. And I would like to start by asking you that, to tell me about this process that FNB is started like a few years ago, but now it's on the move.
Yeah, thanks very much, Pedro, and thank you for the opportunity to be interviewed with you. Look, it's like any great team. You start with getting the basics right in a coordinated manner. It doesn't help if you've got pockets of excellence, but nothing comes together. So the initial phase was pulling the whole team together and to be able to act like a team and literally build a trust in each other and not try to gain own territory. And that's really the basis for any team's success, be it on a sports field, be it in business. So that's where we really started. So I think the turnaround started by doing the basics right. Like any team on a sports field, like any company, it's doing the basics right in a coordinated manner that really counts. So the initial approach was to get the team acting together as a team, building trust in each other, confidence that each other could deliver for their own businesses, and then coordinating it all into a centralized strategy. We did start with defining our key goals, and that's really to be a very safe and simple provider of solutions which bring success to our clients. Over and above that, the other key milestones we wanted to reach were to digitize, have a really, really high quality app, and alongside that, in addition with all of our other services offered, we wanted to be the safest bank in the market. Those are the markers we put in the ground, and that's what we're aiming for. So a high quality service, broad range of products as are allowed in the Mozambican banking sector, but do it safely with the client in mind. And always really treating the client as the number one.
Which we have clearly today, it's not only a perception, there are a few indicators that indicate that this strategy is succeeding, because you can see some in your reports, semestral reports, and we can actually feel the growth of the bank in the last 2 years.
Yeah, I think people generally, they come to their own when they act as a team, where they feel part of a grouping or part of a society. And I think the sense of belonging we've created with our staff has played a major impact in that. One of the other aspects we've really addressed hard is the culture of the people. So, when things are not functioning as well as they should, people don't tend to take as much ownership or accountability because of their own area, because there's always the possibility of being let down by people around you if processes don't work, etc. And that's why we need to do it in a coordinated fashion. The other aspect we really wanted to drive home is, let's start with the back end. I don't want my front end, in other words, my client interacting people, have to look in a rear view mirror and wonder whether what's happening behind them is actually working properly. So it was really starting from processes, strengthening processes, making processes more efficient so that the front line could actually do their business properly. I hope it has been seen. I think it has been seen across the market. And as I've said to my team of late, we've only got the basics right. We've literally laid the foundations. Okay. We now need to build the walls and put the roof on top and become a real bank to be reckoned with. And we're going to keep driving that.
And how do these achievements that you say, how do that base that you built on with your team and all the team together, how did this base that was already solidified, let's say like that, is reflecting on the operation today?
Well, the operation's a lot slicker. I think people come in, they can expect to get a level or a quality of service. They can expect to be advised properly, and ultimately it leads to efficient transaction. I mean, what is a bank at the end of the day? It's somebody who transfers funds to somebody who needs them, or from somebody who has them to somebody who needs them. And that's really what we're trying to optimize, is that process with as minimum fuss as possible. What we're also seeing is a lot of our clients are now more forthcoming with information because they do want to partner. We believe in the partnership approach. I guess it sounds corny and cliched. It always does, the partnership aspect. But to really put a stick in the ground and define what does partnering mean was a really important part of the journey for us.
You are a very experienced man and a very experienced manager in Africa. No? You've been to Nigeria before.
That's right, yeah.
Very different market from Mozambique. No?
I think there are a lot more similarities than one thinks when one thinks of Nigeria. I think that the real market similarities that we need to deal with is they're not advanced in developing products and in really allowing the financial system to operate as a part of the broader business community, to allow business to operate as efficiently as possible. Mm-hmm. There are regulations in place that do prohibit these developments, and to be honest, I can understand where they come from. Just by way of explaining that, I was a capital markets trader in the late 90s when the Russian crisis happened, and I saw how the developed markets could impact on the market liquidity of a currency and an availability of money in a smaller market. And at that point in time, I realized that one does need the regulation in place to be able to control this in a small business environment. I sometimes think we could do more and develop more to allow these restrictions to ease up. And my point here is that there are a lot of banks with a lot of goodwill who do not want to see the banking sector fall over, who can help the regulator establish these boundaries. So it probably requires a trust in the banks and their intentions from the regulator. And what the commercial environment requires is the regulator to be willing to listen to people who have had the experience before and go forward in a partnership manner. So we shouldn't see it as just the regulator partnering with banks. What we should see it as is the regulator and the banks partnering with the business community to make it more competitive, but in a safe environment.
Did you, when you arrived, like 2 years ago, what did your opinion about the landscape of financial system in Mozambique change, or it was? And I would like to ask your opinion today about the ecosystem and the perspectives for the future. And we talk a lot about perspectives in Mozambique, as you know.
Yeah, look, let me give you my absolutely unbiased personal opinion of Mozambique. There is so much more potential here than people realize.
Potential.
It really requires the authorities and business and the financial sector who fund this, along with the development funds, working together to unlock this potential. You know, one of the things I was told when I came here was that the skills levels here are pretty low. Now, how do you come in from a fairly sophisticated market like South Africa, or a market like Nigeria, where they place a high reliance on skills, and operate in a market like Mozambique? And probably your core ingredient there is to actually release people to do what they're good at and encourage them. And one of my, I guess, mentors in this market, Sergio Fernandes, the ex-chief executive officer of Coca-Cola, actually said to me, "You will be surprised at the level of skills if you really try to unearth it." And I think when we start from that basis, as well as looking at just the natural resource base this country has and the potential to do good, high quality, safe, and what's the word I'm looking for? Trustworthy business across the landscape. When you start looking at that, I think there is so much more we can get out of this country. Our economists, our in-house economists, have recently told us that of all of the subsidiaries in which First Rand Group operates, and that's 9 of them in Africa, Mozambique has the highest growth potential.
Okay.
It's also the lowest credit rated.
Yeah.
Now, I think the movement from the regulators, the government, and the financial sector has got to be, how do we get that credit rating improved?
Yeah.
By doing ethical business, good governance business, with a good judicial system to support good governance and good business, and then move that rating up a few notches. What happens at that point? Your borrowing costs become cheaper. It becomes easier to transact, and actually everyone wins.
It's one of the questions is the last few years, and you as a CEO of a bank, you hear this a lot. Because sometimes it's like, instead of working together, it's my perception, the private sector says that the rates are very high, we cannot do business, the banks complain because, but private sector has to have the lots of things, improve lots of procedures and everything in order for us to help. And sometimes it's a gap between one and another, and that could be solved the way you say, everyone working together. I think everyone is trying to work together, but something is missing. And sometimes what's missing is the macroeconomic context that doesn't help as well, because we need growth to do all of this. No?
Yeah. Look, in a small market like this, you're always exposed to global macroeconomics. You cannot get away from it. So rather than try and fight it, we need to learn to deal with it. And how do we deal with it? That is the key question for me. Probably the single biggest thing one would want to see from the private sector is financial discipline. It is, let me be a good custodian of my money, because then I become a trustworthy client, because you're dealing with somebody who will pay your money back. Now, people and the private sector, I guess, often looks at a bank as, this is where I can borrow money. If I can't pay back, the bank takes the knock, and I'm good with that. Ultimately, the right approach is, the bank is only a financial intermediary. Every time I act in a manner which does not show wisdom with my finances, the bank takes a knock, but actually the people who place money with the bank takes a knock. So it has a knock-on effect to broader society. And this is a moral, if one had to call it that needs to be brought into a society where this is the case. I think the lack of regulation from the financial authorities, but also from the tax authorities, etc., actually allow people not to act in a disciplined manner when they do their financial reporting. And ultimately, that financial reporting is what allows a bank to take the first step towards lending. Thereafter, it is the wise management or wise custodianship of the money that's been lent to you. That's what actually takes societies forward. That is a responsibility of every individual. You can't have a small portion of individuals or companies doing it, but the rest of the market acting in a manner that does not show financial restraint. And that's really what we need to do as a community. I don't know if that quite answers your question.
No, more yes, actually, yes. But one of the things I always ask to CEOs of several banks in Mozambique is, what you were saying is more like a holistic approach.
It is a holistic approach, absolutely.
And sometimes in Mozambique, what happens is that we are all waiting for the big economic boom, the big projects and everything.
It's not coming.
What do you think? I would like to have your opinion, because I think sometimes it's my feeling that some companies, or lots of companies, lose a little bit of time waiting or investing to a thing that's going to come, instead of doing that holistic work that you were saying, that working every day to improve, to make connections, to...
Exactly that. So let me come back to your first question. What changed in our strategy to get to where we are today? We've been a retail bank and really a mass market bank probably until 2017. 2018, we looked to transition to a corporate and commercial-led approach. The overwhelming focus for FNB from about 2018 through 2020 was this oil and gas expansion. Now, if one looks globally, when people have waited for these expansions, where do the funds actually flow? not much of it flows into the general private sector.
Yeah.
Okay, so if one takes that approach, and this is the approach we took, we said, okay, fine, what little incremental steps can we take to actually build a sustainable business where we're not waiting for that? So if those big infrastructure projects come, that's the cherry on the top. But we need to be able to operate within a community where we're not waiting for these things to happen, but rather assisting for those incremental, holistic steps to happen. So for me, yeah, you've got to think about the cherry on the top and the big numbers when they do come and arrive. But sitting and waiting for them to arrive is not going to solve any problems. That's the time you need to take that holistic approach and build up in a stepwise fashion.
And here it comes like the digital improvement,
Exactly.
and you are digitalizing lots of processes and things on the bank. I want you to tell me a little bit about it.
No problem. So the digitalization, like I mentioned, we needed to get the core of the bank going and strong first before we actually built out and became the bank we want to be. When you look at digitalization, it's all very well to put the flashy front-end stuff, which everyone loves, using their smartphones, using their computers and tablets to do the stuff you see on YouTube and the flash stuff. Ultimately, if you don't have a really, really strong base behind that, you are going to crash and burn at the end of the day. So we took the approach of stabilizing our core. That's been a journey in itself because we had a fairly unstable core infrastructure. And with that, we will underpin the flashy stuff with something that's solid at the end of the day. You think of Amazon, you think of Tencent, you think of all of these e-commerce platforms. Where did they start? They didn't start with the front end and being flashy to clients. They started with a very, very stable core system off which the transactions could flow efficiently. We're still on that journey. We're not there yet, but we're taking the front end, in other words, what people see, we're taking that a little bit slower so we can actually support it with efficiency. Last thing we want is for people to get this fancy app in their hand, fancy phone, fancy internet banking. You get there, you're excited to go through and do a transaction, and the transaction fails. So all of ours, we've tried to take a wise rather than a fast approach, stabilize the core, get that bedded down, then put the layering on top of that for clients to utilize and appreciate.
How do you think the banking system, and talking about digital solutions, how do you think the banking system in general and the FNB should position to M-Pesa and other wallets that are out there, and that with the big penetration in markets such as Mozambique, no?
Yeah.
Because in Mozambique, I know that lots of banks work together with M-Pesa and all of them, but they are growing a lot. They grow more than banking system in Mozambique, especially. Yeah.
Yeah. Look. So this was one of our challenges when we came in. Do we go digital? Do we go bricks and mortar and put a physical footprint down?
Yeah.
We all believe the future's digital. One of what I believe, not right now, but in the future could be, not will be, could be, our competitive advantage is having a smaller bricks and mortar physical footprint and a larger digital footprint. The challenge one faces in a market like this, and you asked me about Nigeria, it's exactly the same challenge one faces. It's a very cash-based market. So the challenge that we as banks have, we are mandated to handle cash. We're mandated to do transactions digitally as well. How do you marry these two? What M-Pesa does not necessarily need to do, which gives it a competitive advantage, is do the cash handling. So we need to find a way to work together with M-Pesa and, I might add, the regulators to get as efficient an end solution for financial inclusion. This includes, how do we base transaction fees across mobile network operators and banks? How do we create the interfaces for them to work properly? And I think the interfaces are there, but it's a case of there's enough place in the sun for everyone. We don't have to go for a winner takes all approach, which is what's happening now. And those are the dialogues that need to take place. I believe facilitated by the regulator in order for the efficiencies to be for the whole system. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, if the transactional base flourishes with the mobile network operators and the banks, the country flourishes, there's more cash in the system, your ratings, again, going back to where's Mozambique's competitiveness, all of that improves, and over the long term, it creates a better life for all. How should we interact with them? We absolutely need to operate with them integrated as possible, but let's do it in a partnership fashion, not a winner-takes-all fashion, and that's where I think we hit a stumbling block.
I would like to ask you as well about sustainability. It's a theme that is the last few years is on the spot, especially since probably COVID-19. But banking system is and we can see some of those sustainability goals nowadays influencing a number of things in financial system. It's not like it was like 10 years ago. It was a good line to say in an interview. Today, it's actually you have green investment. You have lots of things happening concerning this sustainability. That has lots of areas like human capital and everything. But I would like you to tell me. I would like you to explain a little bit about your vision concerning this sustainability and the banking system.
Yeah. So sustainability, I think, as we all know, is a journey. It's not you can put as much carbon into the atmosphere as you like. You can mine without rehabilitating as you like one day, and suddenly the next day you're a sustainable operation. I think all banks globally are moving towards financing lower carbon footprints, better rehabilitation, better recycling, which I believe to be the right thing. Where I think the financial system, I'm going to go global before I go local, where it gets it wrong, in my opinion, is that it allows carbon emitters and polluters and non-recycling companies to buy credits from other sources and not actually deal with their own issues in terms of pollution. I would like to see finance go more towards finance people who are actually making an effort to reduce, not to compensate by taking off other people who are reducing. So that's the global issue. So where does Mozambique fit in here? Look, it's not a developed country. Mozambique's carbon footprint and sustainability footprint is fairly low as things happen. You've obviously got your mining operations, which you need to take account of. And from a First Rand perspective, which is our parent company, we are having a declining ability to finance these operations. I believe most of the international banks are going that route because it is a practice in the developed world, certainly, to be able to report on these. And I think all the parent companies most of the parent companies, the big Mozambican banks, and both in Portugal and in South Africa, I guess, are pushing this. So I think it's going to impact Mozambique, and we will start seeing reduced levels of financing or increased penalties in financing for unsustainable businesses, and sustainable in terms of sustainability and ESG. But I think it definitely requires a change of mindset where banks become part of a community and a solution provider, creating a partnering approach to helping its clients actually procure and get services from sustainable partners. In other words, I think banks and financial institutions have a broader role to play in connecting businesses together to other people who they're financing and creating an ecosystem for sustainable development like that, rather than looking at each client as an individual client. And I think that is a very practical and pragmatic way of looking at sustainability financing.
You are not FNB Moçambique, but the group is one of the financiers of that syndicate of some of the natural gas projects in the north. Natural gas is a transitional energy source, and this has been lots of people have been talking about this. What's your feeling? And you revealed a little bit before. about the big projects, but of course it's important for the country that they exist.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, a lot's been written about the advantage of the developed world who've done all the polluting and hydrocarbon drawing, and now they're trying to transfer the responsibility to developing countries. Look, the fact of the matter for me is the world needs energy. It's how the world functions. It's not going to go away. So I think as long as we transit over time in the developing markets towards the transition energies, which I think the developing markets have got an abundance of, I'm actually in favor of it, as long as you put that long-term view of let's try and phase out the carbon emissions, etc., etc. And it comes back to my point, don't allow people to buy credits for their own pollution. Encourage people to go to these transitional fuels like LNG, that's in the developed world, which will lower the carbon footprint and eventually move off that onto far more sustainable sources of energy. It's going to take time, but I think that is the developing market's benefit, if I could say that, to having these resources available, to be able to lift communities. The whole world is a better place when all communities and all countries are able to sustain themselves and develop economically. And that's where we need to move to. So I'm in favor of the LNG and the transitional fuels. What we haven't spoken about, everyone in Mozambique talks about the LNG, etc. We don't talk about the wind. We don't talk about the sunshine. Those are the big projects where I reckon if Mozambique actually really, really invests and diversifies. The problem with oil and LNG is it's quick money.
Yeah.
Quick money always gets wasted. Okay? The right thing to do is move from quick money, and I'm not saying don't do it. You need to do it in a phasing out fashion, but move from that into the sustainable, the slower money, the wise money.
And Mozambique has a huge potential in that. And
Absolutely.
we have been seeing some good or fairly dimensional projects in the solar and wind and hydropower.
Let me tell you, I'm a great fan of HCB.
Okay.
It is a world-class operation. And if we can get more companies to operate with the efficiency and governance and ethics that HCB operates, this country will be a lot better off. I think there are leaders probably on the subcontinent in this area. We had our external directors who are generally project financiers. One was a project financier, go up and see the operations. They were absolutely blown away at the level of management, the thinking that's gone behind it, and the fact that an entire Mozambican team ran the operation, which goes back to my earlier point. Look for the skills and unearth them. They are there. Encourage it. It's there. And that's where I think banks need to play a role. The days of increasing return on equity, increasing capital every month at a high rate to effectively reflect the risk of the country, to my mind, that's gone. Equity investors from all the banks who fund us offshore expect high returns because of the risk of the country. I think there's a negotiation to be had between those returns and moving away from hydrocarbon into these sustainable energies. And I think the world is starting to realize that this is the future. Let's fund it properly. Let's maybe lower the expectation of high returns from there.
Yeah.
Let's keep the expectation of high returns on the high polluters. That's what needs to happen. And that's how the balance will shift and move into these more sustainable areas.
What's your perspectives for the next year? We will, because in the last few years teach us that it's very difficult to or to make perspectives in the medium term.
Yeah.
Because every year happens a big thing in the world. But what can we expect from next year in terms of Mozambican economy? The inflation a little bit slower, the growth continuing to the economy continuing to grow.
Yeah. Look, I think there's a lot of consensus that the inflation has peaked in the offshore markets in the developed world. So what does that mean for the emerging economies or for the developing markets? One does ride the same wave in terms of inflation, etc. The most critical issue for Southern African countries, and I alluded to it earlier, is how do you maintain that inflation when you're import dependent? So we've seen the balance of payments of Mozambique negatively trending over the last few years. We've seen a lot of the indicators for currency stability reducing over the last few years. And the central bank, in my opinion, have done a great job of keeping the currency stable.
Yeah.
But there comes a point when those reserves actually do run out, and your ability to influence this does run out. And I think we're heading there. So I'm not suggesting people need to panic and move everything into dollars. I think people need to be mindful we've probably got a longer road to run in Mozambique than other countries have, where they've got a lot of liquidity in foreign currency. So for me, we've seen it in Nigeria, we've seen it in many countries in Africa. Interest rates are primarily used, in fact, yes, to keep inflation stable,
Yeah.
but the key thing is actually to keep the currency stable and to prevent arbitrage of a currency. And so I think we're going to be a little bit higher for a little bit longer. And personally, I would actually support the central bank in that.
Okay.
I really would support the central bank in that.
And then we have the gas project that we don't know if they are going to. Well, we have a good, probably it's one of the greatest news of the year, which
Absolutely.
is the beginning of the export of natural gas
Yeah.
In the north. Eh?
That is true. But as with everything I've said, just watch through history where the flow of funds is gone and make sure it actually spreads more than it should.
Yeah.
And I think that is going to be the challenge for Mozambique. And it's a challenge, it's a difficult challenge because we're coming into an electoral cycle as well. And it's very easy to vote for a short-term view, but people need to think about the long-term view and think about voting there. And I'm not telling people where to vote. All I'm saying is put pressure on the funds to be used wisely.
And I was going to end, but I will ask you one thing, because you talk with investors from other countries. What do you say when you talk about Mozambique? What do you say? Like you told about renewables, of course, agribusiness, logistics. What are for you the main areas that have more potential to a foreign investor?
Look, so we talk two things here: portfolio investment and fixed investment. Portfolio investment. If we're hitting the end of the interest rate cycle, the rate hikes, I think you've probably got good upside in the interest rate market. There's no real equity to invest here to speak of, with the exception of one or two companies which are not very liquid. So portfolio investment in equities, people aren't going to come here until we've got a liquid market where if they go in, they can get out, they can see prices. It's what's commonly termed as price discovery. When there's good price discovery, investors will come. Good price discovery in the interest rate market, investors will come. On a buy and hold basis, in the interest rate market, I think it's a fairly decent, you'll get a fairly decent investment as long as we can deal with that currency issue. So I would encourage them. Let's get to the fixed investment because I've actually put this view out in a number of forums and open forums before, and I'm going to put it out again. Investors want certainty.
Yeah.
They want certainty not in the things they can't control, like the weather, the climate, and whatever. They want certainty into what are the constraints and the parameters they need to deal with in terms of regulation, legislation, tax, ownership, judicial system, etc. The best thing for me that Mozambique could do is publish a black book of this is what you can expect. That's what the law says. You do not need to worry further than that. If you have any instances of coercion beyond that, you can report it to us and we will deal with it. That is how to get foreign direct investment into a country. And I think it's one of the most critical things Mozambique can do. Fail to do that, fail to provide the certainty, fail to back your assertions of a great place to invest up. You are going to detract from investment, and unfortunately, this is what's happened.
Investors will go to Mauritius.
They will go elsewhere. It's happened throughout the continent.
Yeah.
You need to back your talk up with action, and that's where I think Mozambique faces a challenge and really, really needs to deal with the problem.
But the key sectors for you that
key sectors. Look, I think the GDP says it all.
Yeah.
it's agriculture,
Sure.
it's logistics, it's services, it's what we all kind of want to bank. The challenges we face here, though, so it sounds easy and it's easy to say. When one looks at what is GDP, GDP is essentially the flow of goods and services through the market. So you can have informal markets, you can have informal traders, small-scale farmers. It all contributes, for example, to the GDP of agriculture. How do we make that bankable? That is really a very, very challenging problem for people. And going back, that's where banks need to take a partnership approach. My first port of call as a banker should not be, is this client bankable? The first port of call should be, who can I partner with to make that client bankable? That's where we'll see agri go. So in terms of bankable opportunities in agriculture, it's a very small percentage of what the whole agricultural GDP is. But we do believe in it, and we are going to follow an approach, and hopefully we can be a leader in that approach. Logistics, again, it's tricky. It's not an easy thing to finance. Logistics, often you're dealing with movable assets. Now, as soon as you've got movable assets as collateral, the facility for those assets to be damaged, to disappear,
Of course.
etc., disappears. So again, it's a challenging market, but it is a high growth area for the country. And then manufacturing and services. I mean, there's so much imported stuff.
Yeah.
We would back people if we could get the right off-takers within an ecosystem. We would back people to actually start manufacturing businesses. And I think it's great, yeah. So that's really where we're focusing. We're not waiting for the big windfall from oil and gas. We will obviously follow the ecosystem and see downstream who are the service providers to the oil and gas industry we can bank. But, we're not holding our breath waiting.
We are just ending. I would like to ask you, what FNB is the bank that you want to have when this transformation process is ended? What FNB would we have? Ne? How do you present that FNB to the people?
Look, my real goal is not to have to present FNB. I want our clients to present FNB. Okay. So we really need to become a bank that the community backs and the community recommends for the right reasons. Because we are a part of the community, because we're a part of the Mozambican economy, because we're part of people's success. That's where I'd like it to be. So my dream is not to have to position FNB. My dream is for our clients to do that for us.
It's a nice way to end. I would just invite you to look at this wall and say, what's the most important thing that's here for you?
Look, I know I said earlier our clients are most important to us. When our parent company started, I arrived there about 25 years ago. And the one statement made by one of our founders, a chap by the name of Paul Harris, was, our clients are actually not our most important asset. Our staff are. Treat them like that. So if I look at this whole board around here, it goes around our value system to our staff. Be accountable. Build trust. Don't try and hoard things. Innovation, we obviously want to be. It's, to my mind, the most overused word in business is innovation.
Yeah, true.
It really is. So, we need to improve, and let's just leave it at that. Doing the right thing, if I look up there. Treating our customers fairly. To me, when your staff make your customer the most important thing, that's when you have a staff where they feel valued and they never have to compromise their ethics. So when you treat customers fairly, you never have to compromise your ethics. When you start wheeling and dealing with customers and trying to undercut and connive and go around the edges, you probably haven't got the right staff. So staff definitely, accountability, ownership, be bold is something we need people to be. Don't operate, and I guess this is almost for me an African phenomenon. It's a very hierarchical, respectful environment. And in a respectful environment, over-respectful environment, people don't tend to be bold.
Yeah.
treat it like you treat your brothers and sisters. I mean, I chatted to my daughter last night. She's in Germany. My other kids are here. She says the thing she misses the most are her brothers calling her stupid. Okay, be bold. Call things out. Bring things to the forefront. You can do that in a family. That's what leads businesses forward as well. Be bold. Call it out. Not losing focus. And of course, the best, we're the champions. We will win the Premier League at some point in time. It may not be this year, but that's what we're heading towards. We don't take superstars on. The worst culture you can ever have is having superstars who behave badly. It's just not on. We're together, we're in this as a grouping, and we will back each other. So that's how you become champions.